A Russian man on trial for the murder of his sister was filmed attempting to escape from the courtroom through the ceiling. When Leonid Grazer went on trial for a murder he claimed Satan had told him to commit, staff in the Moscow courthouse were clearly taking no chances. Leonid Grazer sat quietly inside the glass box the staff put him in for their safety. Accused of a crime that shook the entire community, but especially his family, the murder of his sister, he awaited judgment in the Moscow courthouse. But for Leonid, the trial was not as important as the reason behind his actions. He claimed that Satan had spoken to him, urging him to commit the heinous crime. As the trial unfolded and his chances for freedom diminished with every passing minute, Leonid Grazer developed an escape plan that would go down in history. With each passing moment, the walls of the glass box felt like they were crushing him inside, so he grew more and more eager to make a run for it, or rather, a climb. When opportunity presented itself, he seized it without having any second thoughts, thinking this was the only way he could break free of his shackles. The events that progressed were veiled in a dense cloud of chaos. The courtroom stood shocked as Leonid launched himself towards the grill atop the glass-walled box, his movements swift and hurried by the adrenaline he felt at the thought that he could be free. The police officers, vigilant and alert, sprang into action as Leonid began his climb through the ceiling. Trying to catch him in any possible way, the officers cornered Leonid as he struggled to get out of his shackles. The scene was baffling, but comic as well. Leonid managed to wriggle free from his trousers as well as from his shackles at last, but the officers were vigilant, fighting as hard as they could to detain the man. In a final attempt to escape, Leonid struggled hard to gather enough strength to get away from the officer's grip, even managing to push the ceiling panels into the crawl space above, but his body eventually met the horrible shock of a taser and the forceful hit of a baton. At last, his escape came to an anticlimactic end. One officer managed to hold him down by one leg until help arrived, while another officer is seen in the CCTV footage using his taser again on Grazer to keep him from trying to flee again. In the end, he pulled his trousers back up and was handcuffed to prevent any more escapes. When petty criminals Tanner Jacobson and Cody Howard decided to leg it from a courtroom in Washington state, they probably thought they'd only have to dodge a few startled security guards. What they didn't expect was that the judge himself would stand up, throw off his black robes like a pro wrestler going into action, and sprint out from behind the bench to give chase. In a video obtained by the Daily Chronicle, District Court Judge R.W. Buzzard can be seen removing his robe and running after Tanner Jacobson, 22, and Cody Howard, 28, after they attempted to flee his courtroom in the city of Chehalis, about 85 miles southwest of Seattle. The two men can be seen in the video from October 16, 2018, still in handcuffs, trying to escape down a stairwell with Jacobson in the lead. The scene unfolded rapidly as Jacobson and Howard made their run in a desperate attempt to regain their freedom. Both of them made it down 4 flights of stairs before Judge R.W. Buzzard eventually caught up with Howard and daringly grabbed him by the arm, forcing him to end his escape. Meanwhile, Jacobson, still desperate and, after he saw Howard was caught, panicked, carried on with their plan, but only managed to make it a few blocks before he was caught by authorities, according to KOMO. Judge R.W. Buzzard recalls the attempted stairwell escape as his most adrenaline-filled day at the office. Buzzard said that he was shocked at first before the realization that there was no one else available to catch the criminals on their way out of the building came to him. So, pushed by his curiosity and wanting to simply know where they were going, he rushed after them. Once I got to the stairwell, I knew I was going to be able to catch the one that was just in front of me because I immediately started gaining on him. I was yelling at them all the way down the stairs to "Stop, you're making things worse." Although this was not his first aggressive incident in the courtroom, this one cemented the fact that the staff needs to work on making the courtroom more secure, as well as maybe doing something about the robes, as he recalled. I found out in April that grappling in a robe is very restrictive. I couldn't imagine running down the stairs and being in a robe, so I got it off as soon as I could and went after him. After their courageous attempt to escape the inevitable arm of the law, Jacobson and Howard have been charged with second-degree escape on top of their previous charges. Footage showing a prisoner escaping from right under a guard's nose in a Washington courthouse is almost too shocking to believe. But in 2015, then 24-year-old Gerald A. Hyde II showed that escaping from custody doesn't always involve some elaborate plan. Sometimes it can be as simple as slipping out of an open door. In the narrow corridors of Benton County Superior Court, where justice is meted out with solemnity, Gerald A. Hyde II orchestrated an escape that would leave authorities stunned. With little more than quick thinking and audacity, he defied the odds and left behind a trail of unanswered questions. Caught on CCTV cameras, the footage captured the moment when Hyde, then 24 years old and convicted of possessing methamphetamine, seized his once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for freedom. As a guard escorted him from the courtroom into an interior hallway, the seemingly routine procedure took a dramatic turn. In a moment of pure distraction, the guard, not paying attention to Hyde, let the inmate escape right from under his eyes. Hyde capitalized on the opportunity and, comically, walked backwards until turning to slip out of the hallway, with the precision of a man who probably thought long and hard about that very moment. As he fled through the empty courtroom he had entered from the hallway, Hyde shed his shoes and discarded his jail-issued shirt, leaving behind almost every bit of evidence that he was ever an inmate awaiting his trial. Wearing a white vest and the remaining vestiges of his incarceration, he made his bold exit through the doors of the courthouse and onto the busy streets. Though Hyde did successfully make it out of the courthouse, his freedom was, as you would expect, short-lived. He was tracked down just a couple of hours later at a friend's apartment a couple of miles away. Hyde was taken back into custody and was hit with a second-degree escape charge for his brazen actions. Charged with second-degree escape, he found himself once more in the clutches of custody, his actions worsening his previous charges and probably bringing more harm to his final sentence. When asked about Hyde's escape, Commander John Law at the Benton County Sheriff's Office said the inmate had escaped due to a blind spot. Already on probation for larceny, Jessica Cato had been compelled to attend a class by court order back in 2016. But while she was there, the staff found out she had some recent warrants out on her for some petty offenses. With the sudden realization dawning on her that they were about to arrest her, the woman first barricaded herself in a bathroom and then tore down a ceiling tile to gain access to the scaffolding above. Jessica Lynn Cato was at the Kent County Court attending a class called Thinking Matters, an intensive program that challenges individuals to examine the core attitudes and beliefs that motivate their thinking patterns and dictate their behaviors, with the ultimate goal of changing those destructive behaviors. Pretty ironic, given the action that unfolded while attending the class. During the class, court security was informed that Cato had 2 criminal bench warrants, one for contempt of court and one for probation violation, and would need to be taken into custody. While in the process of being apprehended, Cato managed to convince the staff to let her go to the toilet while she started to make up a plan to escape incarceration. In a panic, with her heart pounding in her chest, Jessica succeeded in ripping out a tile from the ceiling and crawled inside to evade the staff's gaze. After thoroughly searching for the woman, the officers finally caught her hiding in the ceiling above the public area of the courthouse. After taking her down, they took her into custody and charged her for the 2 then active warrants. Alfred Hines, a burglar and safecracker from London's East End who gained folk hero status as a prison escapee, died back in 2013 at the age of 73, leaving behind a fascinating history of defying the law and earning the nickname Houdini Hines. Leading a life of crime, Mr. Hines was forced to teach himself law and argue his cases in 17 court appearances. From time to time, he would even make his arguments public. For instance, while on the run, he sent letters to newspapers asserting that he had not taken part in a furniture store robbery, for which he received a 12-year sentence in 1953. In 1955, he escaped from prison by copying a key to the jail workshop after memorizing its shape. So it was pretty obvious for everyone at the time that the man wasn't going to let himself be easily confined. Although his most famous escape was from a prison, he didn't shy away from escapes of any kind. For instance, history still recalls the moment Mr. Hines escaped from 2 prison guards while at a court in London in 1957. When he was taken in for a hearing for directions before Master Grundy, 2 prison officers escorted him to the bathroom near the Bear Garden. But when the officers removed his handcuffs, Hines padlocked the warders inside with help from his brother Albert and his then friend Tony Mafia, in a move so dramatic that you would expect to see it in a movie. Hines enjoyed his freedom as he escaped into Fleet Street and off to Waterloo, but he was soon recognized and caught at Bristol Airport 5 hours later while waiting for a plane to Dublin. Despite his dangerous tangos with the law, he earned his fame by publishing a recount of all his escapes in a novel titled Contempt of Court. Eddie Villalobos Jr., a man accused of second-degree murder who bolted from a Washington County courtroom during a break in his trial last year in February, spurred a frantic 2-hour search of downtown Hillsborough before he was eventually captured and taken back into custody. Washington County Sheriff's deputies said they caught up with Eddie Villalobos Jr., 28, and arrested him without incident inside a nearby unoccupied apartment about 1:45 p.m. on February 28, 2023. Villalobos had entered the unit through an unlocked sliding door and was found hiding underneath a blanket in the closet of a child's bedroom. A resident had reported that someone was trying to break into the apartment below, and deputies then contacted the unit owner and learned no one was home, authorities said. Earlier in that day, deputies had removed Villalobos' shackles and allowed him to change into street clothes before potential jurors were led into the courtroom for jury selection. 2 deputies were assigned to guard him, but neither of them managed to keep him detained. Villalobos burst from the first-floor courtroom about 11:15 a.m. that February morning, after returning from a bathroom break while jurors were excused from the room, Sheriff Sergeant Danny DePietro said during a press conference. He outran the deputies, watching him as prosecutors sat stunned at an adjacent table, then rushed out the courthouse's front door. Villalobos' mother was sitting inside the courtroom when her son escaped. Villalobos brushed past at least one potential juror in the hallway, shucking off his shoes and blue-collared shirt while on the lam. Deputies had Villalobos in view twice, but eventually lost sight of him during the chase. Authorities used dogs and drones to search for him, and then got the call from the apartment resident in the 300 block of Southeast 4th Avenue. "I wouldn't call it a failure. We need to reassess how we do things," DePietro said. "Unfortunately, when it comes to removing the restraints, that's what Oregon law requires us to do." The circuit courthouse was sealed, and county staff were ordered to shelter in place during the breakout, as were nearby residents. At the beginning of March 2023, when the trial resumed, a grand jury indicted him on additional charges of second-degree escape and first-degree burglary, on top of his murder charge and additional attempted murder charge. Michael Devin Combs had a court appearance at the Harris County Criminal Courthouse, where a judge revoked his bond and he was put into shackles. He was said to be on a bench inside a courtroom when a brawl broke out in one of the other courtrooms. Eyewitness news cameras captured that fight between the family members of a murdered teenage girl and her alleged killer and then boyfriend. HCSO Major Lynette Anderson said the panic button went off and the deputies went to take care of that. That's when the suspect took advantage of the chaotic situation and took off. How the suspect was able to get the shackles off is being investigated. According to records, Combs was out on bond for assaulting his ex-girlfriend and the mother of his 2 children in 2022. They had reportedly been dating for more than 7 years. A judge revoked his bond and he was placed into shackles because he had reportedly violated his bond conditions by testing positive for meth and shutting off his GPS monitor. According to court documents, the bailiff instructed Combs to sit on the arrest bench, then placed a shackle around his right ankle, and the other shackle was attached to the metal bench. At about 10 a.m. on October 18, 2023, a panic button went off because a fight broke out in a different courtroom between a convicted murderer's family and the victim's family, the Harris County Sheriff's Office said. The bailiff ran to help and no one was supervising Combs. An attorney not representing Combs was with one of her clients and was the only witness who saw him escape with her own eyes. "I have never witnessed anything like this," Casey Little Gonzalez, defense attorney, said. "I looked around and realized there were no bailiffs. I went out in the courtroom and said, I think that guy just escaped." At that moment, Combs managed to kick off his shackles. He just kicked it as hard as he could multiple times, got his ankle loose, looked out the courtroom door to make sure there were no bailiffs, and just ran. Somehow, he walked out of the courthouse without anyone noticing and was on the run for 48 hours until he was arrested at a motel off of South Main Street near Post Oak, tampering with his GPS monitor. Nicholas Button Clark bolted from Liverpool Crown Court on Tuesday, January 2, 2023, after a judge gave him a 16-month jail term. After initially denying the assault, he eventually pleaded guilty with another defendant to assaulting a man in Southport on November 19, 2022, and was given a sentence of 16 months imprisonment for the offense. But as he was being sentenced, he fled the court. As he left the building, he took off his glasses and put on a coat to try and change his appearance. It was initially thought that he had not managed to escape the court building. Guards have been seen patrolling and keeping watch outside. He even managed to get on a train and check into a hotel, but later told officers that he had spent the entire night worrying about what he had done. The following afternoon, he handed himself in at Copy Lane Police Station in Liverpool. He was apologetic and said he'd fled because he hadn't expected a custodial sentence and needed to tell his family. He said he had acted on impulse and hadn't planned it. He was rearrested and appeared at Liverpool Magistrate's Court a few hours later, charged with escaping from custody. He was then committed to the Crown Court to enter a plea. He appeared before His Honor Judge Byrne, the same judge whose court he had fled from 2 days earlier. The 30-year-old held his head in his hands after learning his sentence. After a brief interaction with his mom in the public gallery, he was led towards the cells before his escape. A dramatic video from the Fresno County Courthouse on Tuesday, June 29, 2021, shows an inmate trying to escape from a courtroom. According to the sheriff's office, Brendan Brophy tried rushing out of a Fresno courtroom on that day while he was in a hearing for burglary charges. Brophy ran out after 9 a.m., but a deputy assigned to provide security for that courtroom intercepted him and got into a struggle with the fugitive in the hallway. The struggle lasted for a glorious 30 seconds. For about 10 seconds, it appeared in that CCTV footage that Brophy tried taking the deputy's gun. Brophy's failed attempt to escape the courtroom that day ended with the help of another defendant, who happened to be walking down the corridor where everything happened. The man jumped in to help the deputy get a hold of Brophy while waiting for his colleagues to come and help him. Sadly for him, as his effort to escape was in vain, Brophy is now facing new felony charges of escaping jail, using violence against an officer, and attempting to take an officer's firearm. Brian Gene Nichols, born December 10, 1971, is a convicted murderer known for his escape and killing spree in the Fulton County Courthouse in Atlanta, Georgia on March 11, 2005. While being escorted to his retrial for previous charges, Nichols attacked a sheriff's deputy when she removed his handcuffs, in a struggle that lasted about 3 minutes and resulted in the deputy being severely hurt. Everything was caught on surveillance video. The events are as follows. He took the key to a lockbox where her gun was stored without thinking for a second. Nichols retrieved the gun, changed his clothes, crossed a sky bridge into the next building, and headed for the courtroom. Nichols then went to Judge Rowland Barnes' private chambers, tore out the phone lines, took 3 hostages, and asked about the judge's whereabouts. He left a number of times, finally returning with another deputy taken hostage. The man seized the second deputy's gun and entered the courtroom from behind the bench, firing a single shot into Barnes' head, then shooting and killing court reporter Julie Brando. Nichols then went down the stairwell and left through an emergency exit, setting off an emergency alarm. Making his way on Martin Luther King Jr. Drive, witnesses said he fired multiple shots into the abdomen of another sheriff's deputy, Hoyt Teasley. Then, he decided to steal a dark SUV, 2001 Mazda Tribute, drive fewer than 3 blocks, and crash through the gate of another parking deck. A tow truck driver, Durante Franklin, said that after he directed police into the deck, Nichols came back down and stole his truck at gunpoint. Nichols then drove to another deck about 6 blocks away, where Almeida Kilgo, an employee of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, told the officers he stole her 2004 Mercury Sable. She said she escaped after refusing Nichols' order to stay in the car. Police say they believe Nichols moved unnoticed across the street through a crowd gathering for a college basketball tournament, making his escape on a MARTA subway train to the Lenox area. 13 hours later, Nichols attempted to rob a couple at an apartment on Lenox Road, getting into a scuffle before fleeing. Sometime later, but less than 5 minutes away on foot, Nichols encountered U.S. ICE agent David Wilhelm, shooting and killing him. He then decided to take his gun, badge, and blue Chevrolet pickup. A few hours later, Nichols attacked Ashley Smith, who was returning from running an errand to her apartment in Duluth, about 20 miles northeast of Atlanta. Nichols forced his way into her apartment at gunpoint and bound her hands and feet. Smith said that as they spoke for hours about religion and family, Nichols began to relax and eventually unbound her hands and feet. Nichols forced his victim to follow him early in the morning to hide the truck he previously stole, and then they returned to the woman's apartment. He gave her some money and told her he had to stay there for a while, allowing her to go visit her daughter. After she left the apartment, she dialed 911 and alerted the police of his whereabouts. Within minutes, a SWAT team converged on the building and took Nichols into custody after he surrendered by waving a white t-shirt or towel. A prisoner appearing on remand at a Kent court managed to bust his way out of the dock and flee the building. The dramatic incident happened at the magistrate's court in Folkestone and saw the man flee the courtroom before leaving the building and court approach off Castle Hill Avenue. Although said to be from the Gravesend area of Kent, William Reeder is believed to have links to Durham. He fled the dock at Medway Magistrates Court, where he was brought from custody on Saturday morning on January 28, 2023, facing a charge in connection with an assault. At the time, he was wearing a gray tracksuit, but according to witnesses that day, it is thought he may have been able to change his clothes. Police were swiftly informed of the 35-year-old suspect's disappearing act, and he was later arrested. Kent police launched an extensive search for the defendant, and the force helicopter was reported to have been seen in the area of the court building in Chatham before he was taken back into custody. A Tasmanian man who fled from the Hobart Magistrates Court when he realized he was going to prison gained at least an additional 3 months behind bars after his poor choices. Bodie Savage, 30, from Clarendon Vale, ran from court on September 28, 2022, shortly after being sentenced to prison for other charges. The court heard Savage jump over an enclosed area inside the courtroom, but was still able to exit the building despite being tackled by security. In sentencing, Magistrate Andrew McKee said, "The escape can be best described as a spontaneous decision you made when you realized you would be taken into custody. The escape sparked a large-scale police hunt across the Hobart waterfront and CBD involving dozens of officers, the rescue helicopter, and police boats." Police said Savage went straight to the waterfront but disappeared into a building to make his escape, evading capture for a sensational 11 days. His lawyer, Caroline Graves, previously told the ABC that Savage telephoned police to say he wanted to hand himself in and was arrested at an address in Clarendon Vale without incident. Savage pleaded guilty to a charge of escape and 4 charges of stealing. The court heard Savage stole more than $5,200 of property over several months in 2020 to fund a drug habit, with items including a $500 electric toothbrush from Priceline, $2,999 worth of jackets from Kathmandu, and $1,500 worth of driving lights from Autobarn, and a $169 pry bar set and gloves from Repco. Magistrate McKee sentenced Savage to 28 weeks of further imprisonment with the possibility of parole on top of his previous charges. A Missouri man escaped custody from a downtown courtroom on Monday, October 29, 2018, according to Harris County officials. The escape of Terry Dwayne Rogers, a 38-year-old resident of Missouri City, from custody in a downtown courtroom has stirred significant concern among Harris County officials. The incident unfolded rapidly, sending authorities on a pursuit to locate Rogers, who managed to evade confinement despite being ordered into custody on multiple charges. Rogers' initial arrest occurred only days prior when law enforcement detained him under suspicion of possessing illegal drugs. It's reported that he was out on bond for an unrelated family violence charge at the time of his most recent arrest, adding complexity to his legal situation. The circumstances surrounding his escape have raised questions about the security protocols within the courtroom and the handling of individuals with pending charges. Law enforcement agencies have been actively engaged in the search for Rogers, deploying resources to track down the fugitive and return him to custody to face the charges against him. Their efforts proved to be useful because Rogers was found only a few hours later. According to the Harris County Sheriff's Office, preliminary indications showed the fugitive was simply seeking medical help. An American man was among 3 prisoners who staged a violent escape from a courthouse in the town of Pattaya in eastern Thailand. Corrections Department Director General Naras Savastana said in a statement that the 3 who were shackled escaped Monday, November 4, 2019, while being moved from a holding area to a courtroom. The 3 faced drug trafficking charges and a possible death sentence. CCTV footage showed one stabbing a guard who tried to stop them and another forcing a guard at gunpoint to hand over keys to unlock a secured area so they could make their escape in a nearby pickup truck. The Correction Department statement identified the American as 40-year-old Bart Allen Helmus, who was believed to be the person who stabbed the guard. The 2 others were his Thai wife, Siranapa Wisatrit, and a Thai male named Noi or Tone Nilthes. All had been charged with possession of dangerous drugs with the intent to sell them. Helmus and his wife were arrested in July 2019 after what was reported at the time to be a sting operation in which a police undercover agent bought 10 grams, a third of an ounce, of crystal methamphetamine from them. Police said they seized almost a kilogram, 2.2 pounds, of the drug from them, as well as a gun with 200 bullets and 205,500 baht, $6,800, in cash. After the fugitives' brazen and violent escape from the courtroom, they were tracked down in Sakeo province, which shares a border with Cambodia. The search ended tragically with the man shooting his wife and then himself as police closed in. Seeing as they were not able to escape Thai officials, and already having been given the death penalty, Helmus and his wife saw no other way. The 3rd suspect was apprehended separately, police said, while 2 others suspected of helping the trio make their daring getaway were also detained. Dominique Smith, 22, was in court on Friday morning, June 6, 2014, for a bond revocation hearing. Smith was accused of violating the conditions of his bond due to a new marijuana charge, and Judge William Cole ordered him into custody. Smith was cuffed and placed in the jury box with 3 other detainees, where they waited to be taken to the Jefferson County Jail. At some point, the judge left the courtroom, leaving 2 bailiffs behind. One of the bailiffs eventually stepped out too, and Smith was able to sneak out while still handcuffed around 11:15 a.m. It's unclear how Smith was able to escape, but he also managed to get out of the cuffs. Deputies searched the nearby area, desperately trying to find him. Smith's own mother turned him in to Jefferson County authorities about an hour after the escape, according to a courthouse official. Smith and a second suspect, Jeffrey Howell, were accused of hitting and killing Amber Veras and Ryan Colwell, along with their infant daughter, Rogue Marie, on Birmingham Port Road in October 2012. Smith went on the run after the wreck and was eventually released the next day. He was charged with murder but released on bond until it was revoked. After his attempted courtroom escape, he was held without bond in connection with the murder charge, as well as on a 3rd-degree escape charge, which is a felony. An inmate who escaped out of a second-floor window of the courthouse in Harlan County one Wednesday morning in 2018 was back in jail by the afternoon. His short-lived freedom remains lodged into the collective memory of Harlan County's people as one of the funniest and most bizarre courthouse escapes in the history of the county. The 39-year-old man, Brett Anglian, was supposedly scheduled to appear in court on a contempt charge when he suddenly got the idea to make a run for it. Scared to death of any possible sanction, he escaped out of the window of the 2nd floor and was officially on the lam. His freedom was cut short, however, merely a few hours later. Police searched heavily for the man and finally found him in a residence in Coxton around 3 p.m. that same day. Anglian was immediately returned to the Harlan County Detention Center, urged to await his next sentence, additionally involving charges of escaping the courthouse. The 4th-floor courtroom inside the Broward County Courthouse, situated in Fort Lauderdale, was crowded with the victim's family and curious people when murder suspect Deontay Rizillas escaped from custody, surveillance video shows. Deontay Rezilis, 21 years old, broke free from his handcuffs and shackles during the July 15, 2016 courthouse escape and spent 5 days on the run before he was caught at a Days Inn in West Palm Beach. A surveillance video released after his courtroom escape by the Broward Sheriff's Office shows a group of jail inmates being escorted into the courtroom at 9:36 a.m. when the first sign of trouble occurs. Although the video doesn't show Rezilis making his getaway, it does show a deputy run across the room and out of the courtroom camera's view. The others in the courtroom turn toward the camera, looking in the direction of Rezilis' escape. A few seconds later, several people in the courtroom get out of their seats and walk out of the camera's view. Chaos ensuing. 8 people, Winston Russell Jr., LaQuay Stern, twins Cretran Barnes and Trevon Barnes, Francine Mesadou, Paige Jackson, Armoni Frankson Dennis, and Walter Hart have been arrested in connection with the escape. Broward County Sheriff Scott Israel said the twins sat in the courtroom while Russell and Stern waited in Stern's silver BMW on the north side of the courthouse. He said one of the twins coughed into his cell phone as Rezilis made his getaway, signaling to Stern and Russell that Rezilis was on his way to the car. Their plan was quite elaborate. Mesadou gave Rezilis a wig, eye color-changing contacts, and clothing in an effort to help him conceal his identity. Jackson spoke to Rezilis on the telephone at least 15 times between July 4th to 7th. Detectives believe she set up a series of 3-way calls in order to help Rezilis plan his escape. Frankson Dennis was accused of driving Rezilis to the Oakland Park flea market in the days after his escape. An arrest affidavit said telephone records showed that Frankson Dennis also communicated with Russell 6 times, 5 incoming calls and 1 outgoing text message in the moments immediately after Rezilis' escape. Hart, who was an inmate in the county jail, was also accused of helping Rezilis get out of his shackles before his escape. Michael David Pierce had always been known for his impulsive nature, but on that fateful Monday in Darwin's magistrate's court, his impulsiveness reached new heights, quite literally. On October 12, 2015, as the proceedings went on, Pierce sat in the dock, awaiting his sentence. He faced a variety of charges, but as the finale of his trial was approaching, he saw his chance for freedom. Pierce leaped from the dock and chose his only way of exiting the courtroom, through the ceiling. Ignoring the gasps of the courtroom, he scrambled upward, fueled by adrenaline. For a moment, it seemed as though Pierce might have succeeded. He clawed his way into the roof cavity, but a simple wrong step would prove costly. With a sickening crack, the ceiling gave way beneath his weight, and Pierce plummeted back to reality. The courtroom erupted into chaos as Pierce crashed to the floor. Miraculously uninjured, he found himself surrounded by startled onlookers and the steely gaze of law enforcement. The escape attempt had failed spectacularly, leaving Pierce with nothing but fresh charges and a bruised ego. After the attempted escape, facing charges of escape and property damage, Pierce found himself in an even deeper hole than before. A teen who escaped from a courtroom, apparently at his mother's urging, was sentenced to juvenile detention for up to 3 years back in December 2009. Franklin County Juvenile Court Magistrate William Kirby sent Shaquille Gardner, 17, to the Ohio Department of Youth Services for 1 delinquency conviction for escape and 2 for burglary. With the weight of his actions bearing down upon him, the 17-year-old stood before Magistrate William Kirby. Columbus police said Gardner was taken to court on December 22nd by his mother, Rebecca Gardner, for a hearing. Once she learned that he would be detained, police said, she whispered in his ear, and he ran off while she blocked a courtroom door. As the details of the incident unfurled, it became clear that Shaquille's flight from the courtroom was not a solitary act of defiance, but rather his mother's influence. When the reality of Shaquille's impending detention sank in, Rebecca's maternal instincts kicked into overdrive. Despite his mother's urging, Shaquille ultimately surrendered himself to the authorities. As Shaquille was led away to begin his sentence, the courtroom fell silent. For both mother and son, the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. Rebecca Gardner, 40, later stood trial in March 2010 in Common Pleas Court on charges of escape and obstruction of official business after aiding her son and influencing his escape. A St. Paul man who tried to flee a Ramsey County courtroom over a 4-year prison sentence in July 2023 faced even more time behind bars for the escape attempt. Delmario Lavelle Smith, 21, was in court on Monday, July 10, 2023, when the incident happened. According to a criminal complaint, he became visibly upset when the judge handed down a 48-month sentence on a drive-by shooting charge. Approximately 10 seconds later, as deputies were preparing to escort Smith back to the holding cell, Smith went into a full sprint and bolted through the public gallery and towards the main public exit, the charges say. Mistaking a closet door for the exit, his escape was foiled, and 2 deputies went hands-on in an attempt to secure Smith, who resisted them and continued to fight deputies by comically kicking his legs, swinging his arms, and flailing his body around in an effort to resist being taken back into custody. Despite the assistance of additional deputies and threats to deploy a taser, Smith still refused to cooperate, and deputies had to carry him into a secured elevator to get him to the court security office in the basement of the courthouse, the charges say. Inside the elevator, deputies noticed the defendant was bleeding from a small laceration on his forehead. While they waited for medical assistance, Smith blurted out that you would do the same thing if you just got 48 months. Per the criminal complaint, he went on to say words to the effect of, "I didn't even do anything wrong, just because I didn't want to do my 48 months. Who cares?" He was soon after taken to Regions Hospital for treatment. The deputies involved suffered a number of minor injuries while subduing Smith, mostly abrasions and lacerations. Smith was charged with 1 count of attempted escape from custody and 3 counts of 4th-degree assault on a peace officer. He faced a further 8 years in prison and nearly $20,000 in fines. A startling incident in a Utah courtroom involved a man taking extreme measures in an apparent attempt to escape. Christopher Clay Rudd was sitting handcuffed, appearing in court because he allegedly failed to undergo court-ordered treatment, when he suddenly made a daring, albeit unsuccessful, break for the exit, which was 1 floor below. Clearly, Rudd didn't want to be at the Spanish Fork courthouse, as security video released later on showed him get up, bolt out of the courtroom towards a 2nd-floor balcony, and tumble headfirst over the railing. But in a moment of desperation, Rudd seized his chance for freedom, which would leave onlookers stunned and authorities scrambling to contain the chaos. Security footage released to the public in the aftermath of the startling event captured the harrowing sequence of events that unfolded in the blink of an eye. He bolted from his seat with a rush of adrenaline, his gaze locked on the enticing prospect of freedom just over the balcony railing. With his heart pounding in his chest over the excitement of being free, Rudd threw himself over the railing of the balcony. His fall was as short and anticlimactic as his possible freedom at the moment. Below, officers scrambled to react, their shouts lost amidst the chaos. They simply couldn't do anything but stay and watch as Rudd plummeted towards the hard ground, the sound of impact sending chills down their spines. Though he survived the fall, he bore the physical scars of his reckless attempt: a broken leg and pelvis, a fractured skull. Police said it was not clear whether he was trying to hurt himself or simply acted on impulse, afraid of going to jail. Another reckless 2nd-story escape comes from a Tennessee inmate standing trial at the Cock County Courthouse. 33-year-old Michael Smith, a chained prisoner, boldly decided to take advantage of a brief window of opportunity to break free. Surveillance video from inside the courtroom and outside the building captured the brazen escape attempt. Michael Smith was in court Monday, February 13, 2023, with 6 other inmates. Smith stood up from the bench numerous times to get a tissue from a table near the window, the sheriff's office said. Swiftly, seemingly out of nowhere, Smith approached the window. In a daring leap of faith, he flung open the window and threw himself out, wishing to escape his fate, but ending up plummeting towards the ground below. Despite the pain coursing through his body, Smith rose to his feet in a final attempt to make a run for it. Unfortunately, officers ran towards him and stopped his attempt to escape. Shackled and handcuffed, he attempted to flee the scene again, only to be swiftly apprehended by a vigilant sergeant standing nearby. Smith was immediately taken to a medical center to be treated for the minor injuries he suffered during his fall for freedom. Because of his poor choice, he faced an additional charge of attempting to escape, on top of the charges he was in the courtroom for that day. Smith was originally in custody at the Cock County Jail on a fugitive from justice warrant from another state. There was commotion at an Asaba High Court back in 2013 as two robbery suspects took everybody unaware and escaped from the courtroom immediately after the judge sentenced them to death by hanging, having found them guilty on 2-count charges of armed robbery. As the gravity of their fate sank in, they made their plan to escape the courtroom. The two men leaped from the dock, their movements leaving everybody present in the courtroom in awe. The two suspects who were in the dock without handcuffs jumped out, became violent, and used a wooden barricade to block traffic leading to the court to hit prison officials chasing them. The convicts were Elvis Agbafoto and Frank Okadima, both from the Ekpan community in the Uvwi local government area of the state. The prosecution had told the court that they robbed the residence of one Mrs. Mercy Omatse of valuables and cash on July 8, 2010. As they fled, the streets of Asaba became a battleground, with the sound of gunshots piercing the air as chaos reigned supreme. Despite their efforts, armed prison officials, with the help of some residents in the area, caught up with the two men and took them back into custody. One of them was even shot by an armed prison official who pursued him to nearby church premises, about 100 meters from the court. As a result of the incident, further proceedings in the court were disrupted as the judge, court officials, and lawyers scampered for safety as gunshots rended the air. The new controller of prisons in the state, Mr. Joseph Olenrele, had, during a later courtesy visit to the State Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice, Mr. Charles Ajuya, expressed worry over the large number of condemned criminals in various prison formations across the state, noting that it was worrisome as they, the condemned criminals, constantly create problems for prison officials looking after them while awaiting the hangman. Meanwhile, the State Attorney General, Mr. Charles Ajuya, condemned the lax security measures that allowed such a brazen escape to occur, vowing to tighten security to prevent future incidents. He also condemned the use of phones by some inmates even while in court, saying such an act is capable of undermining the security of officials and inmates. In the summer heat of 1984, Virginia found itself gripped by a wave of audacious escapes, culminating in the daring flight of Jean Lorenzo Crocker, a convicted burglar determined to defy the clutches of justice. A 23-year-old, armed and dangerous convicted burglar who escaped from Suffolk County Police one Friday back in 1984 brought, then, to 9 the number of prisoners who have escaped from Virginia police and corrections officers' custody in the previous 7 weeks. Jean Lorenzo Crocker eluded a deputy sheriff at 11:20 a.m. on a July Friday in 1984 and jumped headfirst out an unsecured second-story window of the Suffolk County Municipal Building, where he was scheduled to testify in court. The deputy attempted to prevent the escape by grabbing Crocker's ankles, but was unsuccessful, said Police Sergeant G.A. Barrett. Despite the deputy's valiant efforts to thwart his flight, Crocker's determination proved insurmountable. In the chaos of the moment, he emerged battered and bruised from the fall, his hand injured and his head possibly concussed. Yet he managed to vanish into the streets of Suffolk. 6 convicted murderers who were later captured broke out of Mecklenburg Correctional Center on May 31st, and 2 other prisoners walked away from a work detail outside the penitentiary on June 29th. The ensuing hours saw Crocker as he embarked on a whirlwind spree of crime and chaos. An hour after the escape, a man believed to be Crocker was reportedly armed with a large kitchen knife when he accosted a resident of a home 2 blocks from the court. He bound the woman to a bed, left her otherwise unharmed, and took clothing from the house. Undeterred by the authorities' pursuit, Crocker's trail of mayhem continued as he targeted an elderly man visiting a cemetery, robbing him of his car and a meager sum of money, $100, before vanishing once more. The stolen vehicle, stripped and abandoned in Portsmouth, was later found by authorities, who identified it a few days after the incident. With each passing hour, the hunt for the elusive fugitive intensified as authorities pursued leads and combed through the shadows in search of their elusive prey. "We're following up leads as to his possible whereabouts," said Barrett, who refused to give details of the search at the time. Jean Lorenzo Crocker was found several weeks later on September 5, 1984, and arrested by FBI agents in New York. Released footage has unveiled the startling moment when an Adelaide prisoner, Daniel James Nicholson, orchestrated a dramatic escape attempt upon learning that his bail had been revoked during a pre-sentence hearing at Christie's Beach Magistrate's Court in September. In the CCTV footage, the 35-year-old is seen positioned behind a transparent partition within the courtroom when a sheriff's officer enters the dock, prompting Nicholson to abruptly rise from his seat. Climbing onto a nearby table, he aggressively swats at the approaching officer and another who rushes forward to assist in detaining him. Struggling, Nicholson stumbles and crosses over the partition, landing on his knees on an adjacent table within the open area of the court. As this unfolds, a police prosecutor swiftly reacts, seizing Nicholson from the table and forcefully throwing him to the floor in an attempt to thwart his escape. Despite the prosecutor's intervention, Nicholson persists in his bid for freedom, causing injury to one of the officers who hastened to provide assistance. Eventually subdued, Nicholson is apprehended and the sheriff's officers escort him out through an open door. During a subsequent hearing, a judge characterized Nicholson's escape attempt as impulsive, violent, and forceful, noting his documented struggles with anger management and impulse control, as well as his history of non-compliance with court orders. Bail was once again denied, with the court urged to consider a sentence that prioritizes community protection and reflects the severity of Nicholson's actions. Nicholson pleaded guilty to the charges of attempting to escape custody and 2 counts of recklessly causing harm to a prescribed emergency worker. The injuries sustained by the sheriff's officers during the scuffle were significant, with one requiring a moon boot for 8 weeks due to a foot injury, and the other experiencing a clicking jaw and headache. In his defense, Nicholson's legal representation highlighted his remorse for the incident and cited his long-standing struggle with illicit drug use. They advocated for leniency, proposing a suspended sentence or home detention as viable alternatives to incarceration. Despite the remorse expressed by Nicholson and his legal team, the gravity of the situation cannot be understated. The attempt to escape custody not only endangered the lives of law enforcement officers, but also undermined the integrity of the judicial process. In sentencing Nicholson, the court faced the complex task of balancing accountability for his actions with considerations of rehabilitation and public safety. On April 11, 2012, a startling incident unfolded at the magistrate's court in Minna, where 5 out of 7 armed robbery suspects managed to evade custody while awaiting the magistrate's arrival to commence proceedings, as recounted by witnesses. According to reports from eyewitnesses conveyed to the news agency of Nigeria, the suspects made their getaway in a Honda Accord belonging to Tanemu Bako, the prosecutor. It was alleged that they utilized cutlasses and a sickle, which they found within the courtroom, to assault the prosecutor, rendering him unconscious. A court employee disclosed to NAN that the suspects were observed whispering among themselves before seizing the weapons on display within the courtroom. Armed with these implements, they instilled fear among court staff before launching their attack on the prosecutor. The worker further revealed that the prosecutor attempted to secure the courtroom door before being overwhelmed by the assailants, resulting in severe injuries and profuse bleeding that necessitated immediate medical attention at Minna General Hospital. Magistrate Amina Musa corroborated these accounts in her statement to NAN, expressing gratitude that she had not yet arrived at the scene, acknowledging the potential danger she could have faced. "Thank God that I had not arrived. Only God knows what they could have done to me," she said. Mrs. Musa said the remaining suspects have been handed over to the police and stressed that the prison officials brought the suspects to court without adequate security arrangements at the court. "There was no police or warder at the court when it happened," she said. She said that the police later recovered Mr. Bako's car without the suspects at Maurice area of Minna, where they hit another car while trying to escape from the police, who were chasing them. Also confirming the incident, the police public relation officer in Niger, Richard Oguche, said the police have queried the prison authority. Ms. Musa highlighted the lack of adequate security arrangements at the court premises, emphasizing the absence of police or prison warders at the time of the incident. The incident served as a wake-up call for authorities to address vulnerabilities in security protocols and reinforce measures to deter similar occurrences in the future. A man who escaped from the dock in the Northern Territory Supreme Court and shoved a security guard has been sentenced over the escape and the armed robbery charges he was originally in court to face. Kyle Campion, 21, on Friday, December 16, 2022, pleaded guilty to charges laid over the incident earlier this week, including aggravated assault and escaping custody as well as property damage. The court heard Campion was previously arrested in December 2021 for an armed robbery and had remained in custody before being brought to court for sentencing on the morning of December 13th. When the matter was adjourned so the court could consider a potential suspended sentence, Campion seized the opportunity to escape the courtroom. The 21-year-old man shoved the security guard behind him with force to the throat and chest, according to presiding Justice Sonia Brownhill. He then jumped over the dock and grabbed a metal water jug as he ran out of the courtroom with the intent to exit the building. The court security staff closed the courthouse automatic glass front doors before Campion shoulder charged and smashed the jug against them, causing them to shatter. The court heard that he then fled the courthouse through an emergency fire door. He was found by police less than an hour later on nearby Smith Street, holding a steel bar and a garden pick, trying to deter the officers who came to catch him. Justice Brownhill said a police officer pointed a taser at Campion and told him to drop the weapons before arresting him without incident. Campion's lawyer, Joe Burke, said his client had fled the dock because he found out that some family members had died and he had not had the chance to speak to his lawyer before his court appearance. He noted that he was just feeling frustrated out of fear that he would miss those funerals, Mr. Burke said. He said Campion, who has spent most of his life in Manangrita, had been diagnosed with a number of cognitive disorders over his life, but a report tendered in court outlining his most recent psychiatric evaluation found no indication of cognitive impairment. Crown Prosecutor Steve Leddick said Campion had previously been convicted of escaping custody on 2 separate occasions, so this wasn't his first attempt to escape. His criminal history suggests that when he sees an opportunity to make a break for it, he will take that opportunity, he said. Justice Brownhill sentenced Campion for the offense, as well as for the aggravated robbery of a man at the Casuarina bus exchange and for carrying a knife in the Casuarina car park in December 2021. Campion had earlier pleaded guilty on both counts. What you did in escaping custody was brazen and caught on CCTV cameras, Justice Brownhill told Campion during his sentence hearing. Such offending undermines the administration of justice, and the front doors of the Supreme Court are a symbol of the administration of justice in the Northern Territory. Campion was sentenced to 2 years and 5 months prison for the aggravated robbery and 1 year and 7 months for his attempted escape. He will, however, be eligible for parole in late 2024. Akpara Miracle, a rape suspect hailing from Akuzu, an Oyi local government area of Anambra State, managed to evade custody from a magistrate's court in Awka on October 5, 2016. The escape occurred just as Miracle's trial was set to start, and he took advantage of the moment when his handcuffs were removed. Allegedly, he forcefully broke through the window louvers and fled into a nearby bush. Prior to his escape, Miracle had been arrested on charges of kidnapping, rape, and involvement in cult activities. He was scheduled to be arraigned for the abduction of a minor whom he purportedly held captive in an unfinished building in Awka for an extended period, during which he sexually assaulted her. According to reports from the News Agency of Nigeria, NAN, the absence of protective measures on the windows facilitated Miracle's escape. Witnesses stated that Miracle had initially been brought to the court wearing handcuffs, but they were later unlocked with the expectation that he would exhibit good behavior. Unfortunately, the situation took an unexpected turn. N.A. Onunkwo, the presiding magistrate, instructed the police to intensify efforts in locating and apprehending the escaped suspect, emphasizing the importance of bringing him to justice. An Ohio drug convict mounted a daring caught-on-camera escape from custody during his sentencing in September 2020, according to reports. Nicholas Garrison, 34, had been on the run since Tuesday, September 22, 2020, when he shook loose from deputies and fled the Highland County Courthouse, where he was to be sentenced on a felony meth possession charge, WKRC reported. Footage from the courthouse shows Garrison break loose from 2 deputies as he was being led into a courtroom. The courtroom cameras show Garrison taking off, running through the courtroom and out a door. He then runs out and down a flight of stairs with the deputies in tow. One deputy is seen leaping over the railing and onto the staircase in a frantic attempt to tackle Garrison. The deputy suffered broken ribs and a possible concussion during the fall, the station reported. Nicholas Garrison was found just a few days later, after a video emerged of his escape from the Highland County Courthouse earlier in the week. In the early morning hours of Friday, September 25, 2020, Garrison was apprehended without incident at a Clinton County motel. Following the incident, 2 women have been accused of helping the 35-year-old with his great courtroom escape. Amber Ward, 29, agreed that she did aid and abet and did harbor and conceal Nicholas Garrison in the days that followed his escape. At a later scheduled status hearing, the woman pleaded guilty to the charges facing her. The other woman who was accused of helping Garrison after his escape attempt, Alicia M. Ralston, 32, received a 3-year community control sentence from Hogan in April 2021 for the incident. A year later, Garrison appeared before visiting Judge Daniel Hogan and pleaded guilty to 1 count of escape, a 3rd-degree felony, and 1 count of assault on a peace officer, a 4th-degree felony, in connection with his escape from the 2nd-story courtroom. Garrison was sentenced to 12 months on each count of escape and assault on a peace officer, to be served consecutively, and 2 years on each count of aggravated possession of methamphetamine and aggravated possession of fentanyl-related compound, also to be served consecutively. Thinking back on his actions, Garrison stated, "I'd just like to say, I never planned that out. I acted on impulse and I really regret those decisions." Back on June 11, 2004, a group escape shattered the community of Perth, Australia. A manhunt commenced after 9 prisoners overpowered guards at a court, stole the supervisor's keys, and fled before carjacking 2 motorists. Police officers fortunately recaptured one of the escapees when they stopped a stolen car at an off-ramp at Perth's southbound freeway. The men were among 11 maximum and medium security prisoners who had been transferred from a prison transport van into a basement holding center at the West Australian Supreme Court building shortly before 11 a.m. WST. On June 11th, the WA Justice Department said, 9 of them overpowered 3 AIMS security officers and stole the supervisor's security keys before fleeing a holding cell in the basement via corridors and a fire escape. Several of the escapees carjacked 2 male motorists who had stopped at traffic lights near the courthouse, pulling them from the vehicles and taking their cars. Others fled on foot. Around 1 p.m. WST, police stopped one of the stolen vehicles, a Land Rover, on the Leach Highway off-ramp of the Kwinana Freeway. The other 8 men were still at large, and police were also looking for the other stolen car, a blue Holden Commodore. All 9 prisoners were classified as maximum or medium security prisoners. Several had a history of violence, and all were wearing civilian clothes when they escaped. 3 were sentenced inmates, but were appearing in court on other matters, according to the Justice Department. 1 was facing an appeal, and the others were in custody on remand. All were attending court for status conferences. Their current and alleged offenses range from armed robbery, aggravated burglary, stealing motor vehicles, and assaulting a public officer, the Justice Department said back in 2004 when the event took place. Fortunately, 4 of the 9 fugitives were caught a few days after their initial escape, while the other 5 were brought again into police custody days later. However, this remains one of the most iconic courtroom escapes in Australia, especially because it was orchestrated by a large group of inmates.